All right, there's a lot to digest here with playoffs, so let's get someone who can really help, and that is the king of the calculator, Clinton Fowler. Let's get some projections, some idea of where we're headed for playoffs. Top 20 automatically into the motos. Again, top 30 have a chance to race their way in through the LCQ. Let's go 250 class. What are you looking at right now when you try to crunch this data and try to think of where we'll be in August when we determine this field?
The first thing you got to look at is what's it going to take to get into the top 20? What's it going to take to get into the top 30? In the 250 class, we're looking at 167 points is the cutoff for top 20. We're looking at 101 points for the top 30. So those look like, given the projections, and things can change, injuries, new riders coming back from injuries, people just doing better, but those look like the cutoffs to make the playoffs.
So you've projected out at the end of the 11th motocross round. That's the amount of points you would need to be in or out. That's your projection. That's not the way it is right now, but that's the way it's probably going to look.
Looking at their averages this year, projecting that forward, and bam, you got 167 and 101 as your break points.
Okay, so we'll talk about top 20 and 30, but I know one thing you want to talk about is the very top. Well, the points reset when it's over. Hunter Lawrence's gigantic points lead, if he holds it to the end, will pretty much be gone. Let's say he enters number one seed. He'd have 25 points to start the playoffs. A small bonus over whoever is second. And you're noticing this second place duel in combined points right now.
I mean, incredible battle, guys. They're separated by, 4 points right now? Hayden Deegan and RJ Hampshire. JT, this is an interesting one. We got a preview of these two guys going head-to-head in High Point this past weekend. But I think these guys look like the most interesting battle in the top 5.
Yeah, and remember, they weren't on the same coast for Monster Energy Supercross. So even though they're like magnets both on the track and in the points right now, it's a relatively new battle between these two. So interesting to see the youth and the veteran side, although you could argue that RJ Hampshire's racing dynamic isn't always very veteran-ish. It's kind of crash or win a lot of the time. But yeah, it's really interesting dynamic. And remember, all of this is new for these guys. They haven't ever had to combine 2 series and then think about how a playoff run transforms into that. So yeah, we're kind of learning as we go here.
Okay, so you're saying, Clinton, you think there's 8 riders who are probably definitely going to be in on numbers, right?
Yep. There's 8 riders. They've won a main event. They've won an overall. They've won a moto. So guys like Hunter Lawrence, Hayden Deegan, RJ Hampshire, Levi Kitchen, Justin Cooper just got the moto win. So regardless of what happens for him, he's got a lock in. So there's 8 of those guys.
Yeah, those guys getting in at least the LCQ. If you win a moto or a Supercross main, you get into the LCQ for sure. But we don't know which one of these riders will be back. We did just find out. We're pretty sure Justin Cooper will return to racing this weekend at Redbud. That is great news to get Cooper back. As far as Nate Thrasher, I don't think he's going to make it back. Max Ansby, will he have a ride? He'll have earned a berth, at least in the LCQ. Will he have a ride? We don't know. And that's what really messes it up, is other riders starting to rally. We'll get to them in a second. But first, you do have 4 others you think by points are looking good?
Yeah, there's 4 guys right now that have already scored more than 167 points. So Tom Vial, Joe Shimoda, Max Volan, and Jordan Smith, they to me are almost a guaranteed lock in the top 20 making that cutoff point.
And JT, here's where it gets interesting. We have all these riders who maybe had a bad Supercross season and are back for outdoors or didn't even race Supercross at all due to injury. And that's where it gets interesting to try to project where those guys can go, JT.
Yeah, and there's so many points up for grabs still in this Pro Motocross Championship. And you get 2 shots at it in Pro Motocross versus Supercross. So the dynamic there that plays out, if you get on a run and get hot late in Pro Motocross, you can really ramp up your overall score really quickly just by the amount of racing you get to encounter.
So give us some samples of those riders who are kind of on the rise now that motocross has started, or that are looking to come back and score points soon in motocross.
Yeah, Weege, there's, a guy like Carson Mumford who didn't race a ton in the Supercross. He's on the rise. He's got 113 points right now. He needs another 50 to 60 points to hit that top 20 projected cutoff. So I think a guy like him is a great example. Another one, Ryder DeFrancisco, Jalik Swoll, they both missed Supercross. And then JT, there's 3 guys that are really interesting to look at. Seth Hammaker coming back from injury. Austin Faulkner coming back from injury. Heard that he should be back at one of the next 2 rounds. And then Styles Robinson, we've seen some posts where he's back on a bike. Those 3 guys, incredibly talented, should be able to gain a ton of points, but depends on when they come back.
Let's go to the 450 class. Same thing here. Projected points. What are you looking at right now? What's your story? I guess at the top, we could start there.
Yeah, I mean, the cutoff points here, top 20 is looking at 157 points. In the top 30, we're looking at 85 points. So really close to what we're seeing in the 250 class, but a little bit of difference in subtlety just based off of the classes. And to the locked in, the guys that already have the win, so they're guaranteed a top 30 slot. You got Chase Sexton, Eli Tomac, Cooper Webb, Justin Barcia, Ken Roczen, and of course, Jet Lawrence, who has already locked himself in, having won plenty of motos here to start the season. So those guys are locked in for top 30 slots.
Okay, 2 things here. Let's talk Lawrence. Where do you think he might end up, even without Supercross points? He's into the LCQ just by winning motos, but he's going to be a lot higher than just top 30. Where do you think he might end up if he keeps doing this?
Yeah, assume the impossible here, JT. Assume the impossible. Assume he sweeps the entire series. He scores 550. He's going to finish the season 5th in the standings.
Wow, that's impressive. And then also give me this. Cooper Webb, his strategy is paying off. He's moved to the top of the charts. But you're saying if Sexton comes back, we might have a battle to be number 1 seed and have those 25 points going into the playoffs.
I think the top battle here is going to be Chase Sexton and Cooper Webb. If you look at Sexton, if he comes back at Redbud, he scores 5 points more per round, which is totally reasonable to do. He's going to be looking at a 2-point advantage at the end of the season. So you look at Sexton versus Webb, that's the one that's going to be really interesting. It depends obviously on Sexton coming back, but I mean, JT, you look at the racing, for Sexton to score a position better than Webb every single moto for the remainder of the year is not far-fetched.
It's not. And, we're assuming that we get to see a healthy Chase Sexton back in action at Redbud. But I think if you're Cooper Webb, you just keep doing what you've been doing, right? There's no guarantee that Sexton's going to come back or stay all the way through the remainder of the series. You've taken over the lead in the overall points for now, and you just do what you can do. You control what you can control. But I would argue that the most intriguing battle is all these privateer guys that are behind him that are now juggling positions, changing plans, trying to come back into pro motocross to get inside that top 20 or even the top 30. Just watching all of that drama unfold for me has been really entertaining.
Yeah, so a couple names are probably going to get enough points. You're projecting, if you're Plessinger, Cianciarulo, Ferrandis, Anderson with his Supercross points alone, he'll probably get more motocross at some point. Grant Harlan has been spectacular this year. They're looking to get in. Then you've got another group that's in that projected top 20, but it's going to be close. Talk about some of those names, Clinton.
Yeah, there's a couple of guys here. Kyle Chisholm is just below the cutoff right now. I verified with him last week. He's in for the remainder of the round, starting with Seltwick, so he's almost a guaranteed to be a top 20 guy. But then you've got Ty Masterpool, who has come into the 450s and just been amazing. I think he's going to be in there. Garrett Marchbanks, the exact same thing. Derek Drake, Lorenzo Lacurcio, and Romain Papi. Those guys look like projected top 20 because they've just been doing really well in the Pro Motocross Series.
JT, at the beginning of the year, did you have Ty Masterpool, Derek Drake, and Roman Pep from France as top 20 in combined 450 points?
Well, I didn't have Roman Pop on any list at all. Even as a human on this earth, I didn't have him on that list.
Yeah.
But yeah, the rest of the guys, it's just so interesting how many points you can make up so quickly if you start running around that 4th, 5th, 6th position in pro motocross, because again, you get 2 motos. So for us to be talking about Garrett Marchbanks in this discussion 3 weeks ago, we would have never thought, but then a decent round at Thunder Valley, a breakout race at High Point, and here we are. Now he's in consideration.
Okay, so that's top 20-ish. Now, top 30, this is where it gets really crazy. Clinton, you're looking at a lot of guys who are not racing motocross right now, who are going to be close. Do they come back? Let's talk about some of those names. Josh Hill, Shane McElrath, those types.
Yeah, I mean, there's 4 guys. The cutoff, okay? The cutoff's 157 points, or at least what we think is going to be the cutoff. Just below that, we've got 4 guys that are incredibly talented. Shane McElrath with 151 points, Christian Craig with 150, Josh Hill with 149, and Colt Nichols with 141. And I saw a post just recently where he's trying to find a bike and figure out a way to come back and race a couple of rounds. Those guys are all just outside. I mean, 20 points in pro motocross for those guys is a reasonable get in a weekend. So I think those ones are really interesting to see if we see them return towards the end of the year.
And JT, did you see Kevin Moran's, the privateer, all of a sudden rallying to try to put a program together, similar circumstances?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of strategy going on behind the scenes. And Clinton, you might be the biggest asset to any of these riders. You might be on like the Mercedes strategy team for Formula One here, because there's going to be a lot of calculations done on the fly as we enter these final few Pro Motocross rounds for not only the top 20, but just for that top 30 to have a chance at some of this money.
Yeah, JT, it's interesting. I talked to a couple of them, talked to Cartwright, to Justin Starling, and they're definitely thinking about it. They're looking at where they are on the points. Justin Starling looking at coming back for Ironman. Those points could end up being really critical depending on where that last cutoff bar of 85 points, if that ends at 85 or a little bit above. So it's going to be interesting to field some questions from them.
Yeah, and that's where the intrigue comes in. I mean, if you look at how Pro Motocross has transformed or transpired so far, it's Lawrence brothers domination, big points leads, all that. But this could transform when you get to the final rounds. Even if the Lawrence brothers are still out front in Pro Motocross, think of the drama going into Ironman with all these riders showing up, whatever bike they can grab, try to get either top 20 to guarantee they're in the motos, or top 30 to at least have a shot in the LCQ. It's going to be awesome. So keep the calculator smoking there, Clinton.
Thanks, Reach. Thanks, JT.
Hi, folks. Lee Diffie from NBC Sports here. If you truly enjoyed what you just watched, you can get more news, interviews, and highlights by subscribing to the Motorsports on NBC YouTube page. You can get it all, so go for it.